Today. I now welcome Peter Hennessy and Peter Payne to give evidence today. For the Hansard record, would you please both state your name and capacity in which you appear before the committee? I'll start with you, Mr Hennessy.
Thank you. My name is Peter Hennessy. I'm a resident of Bathurst, and I've been asked to come along to say a few words in relation to solar, insofar as it's relevant to this inquiry.
No worries, thank you. Mr Payne?
My name is Peter Payne. I live in Sydney. I have lived in Sydney most of my life, but I've also lived in Asia for about 12 years. I've had a long lifetime career in electrical energy, including power distribution, monitoring, control, and renewables, as well as a strong career base in commercial avionics and the commercial aviation industry, in which safety is a paramount element.
Thank you. If we could just speak up so the people behind us could hear us as well, that would be good.
Sorry.
Yep, that's okay. We'll try to get the witnesses to speak louder so people can hear. We set this up for Hansard and for broadcasting, not for spectators as well. So this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Before I invite you to make a brief opening statement and then we proceed to discussions, would you please state if you're a current or former member of a political party or a union or an investor in the renewable or nuclear industries, please? Mr Hennessy.
Thank you very much. I'm not a member of Parliament. I'm not interested in politics, and I'm not a member of any group, or I'm simply here as an individual.
Yep. Mr Payne?
I am not involved in politics, but I've been following it very closely since I was 16.
Yep, thank you. I now invite you to both make a brief opening statement. We'll start with you, Mr Hennessy.
Well, thank you. All right, well, I'll endeavour to keep it brief, and I accept that the chairman is rather strict in this regard. Peter Hennessy is my name. I am a retired barrister, an SC, and am now a full-time farmer living on my property at Bathurst. I have practiced conservation, planting thousands of trees and creating wildlife corridors through my property. I believe I am truly green. I want to deal briefly with the State Planning Authority rules in relation to solar. The State Planning Authority rules were originally designed for a proponent and a community consulting, and both sides acting fairly. For many years that system worked well. There were local companies with a reputation to protect, and they consulted well with the community. Then along came renewables. With renewables, essentially we have offshore companies sending $2 companies over here with no reputation to protect and let them loose on the public. The end result of that is that the rules have proved totally inappropriate. There is, in fact, whilst the original idea was to cooperate with the community, the rules don't force that, and so the community was left high and dry, without any real consultation and indeed without any money. A proponent no doubt pays a hefty fee to the State Planning Authority to engage in its project. The proponent has everything to financially gain, and the State Planning Authority has in effect a free ride. The community, who is expected to respond to the proposal, however, pays for itself. We spent, in relation to Glanmire, at least $100,000 on experts, and I spent at least $100,000 in time. I did it gratis, of course, and there were many, many others helping me, all gratis. Not too many communities can afford this sort of opposition. Either the State Planning Authority ought to investigate or the community ought to be funded, and this could be readily done, but it hasn't been. So we start with an unlevel playing field. Just a few points in relation to the system itself. In relation to the system, when fighting a solar proposal, we are not allowed to refer to renewable energy zones. These are zones created throughout the state. They are zones created in areas where farmers wanted them because the land was poor and relatively unproductive. On my inquiries, it was revealed by the relevant authority, in fact, that there was plenty of solar in the renewable energy zones as at 2020, but there was also plenty of room for more. Why wasn't there any more? Because the government merely had to upgrade its wires, and it hadn't done so. And so these people were let loose on the community. Insurance would have not been a problem if they were kept to renewable zones, in that insurance could have been reciprocated. But we were not allowed to refer to that at all. How irrational is that? We have chosen renewable energy zones, but they're out of the picture when it comes to dealing with renewables. All right, well now in relation to the rules provide just a couple of other essential points. The rules provide that there's to be no undue interference with neighbours when a proposal is put forward. The area of Glanmire is surrounded by grain-producing properties, and of course they, in the middle of summer, where grain is of necessity harvested, are a real fire risk. And we have a solar proposal next door, extending not like a factory where the old planning authority rules applied, but rather a frontage, in this case, of about 2.5 kilometres frontage to a westerly wind at about 800 metres in depth. We pointed out to the planning authority and then to the Commission that public liability insurance simply could not be obtained by neighbours. Whether they produced grain or not, no neighbour could obtain insurance beyond 30 million, certainly not beyond 50 million, and most certainly not 300 to 500 million. So if there was a fire on the neighbour's property that extended onto the solar, those neighbours were self-insurers. Nothing could be done about it. No indemnity or any of that nature could be covered. All right, well now the Commission heard all of that. They listened intently. I won't go into all those matters where there were marginal issues. They were all decided against us, of course. Anything as marginal is decided against the community. But this one is a no-brainer. There is no answer to it. What did the Commission say? Well, look, we think we'll approve it anyway because I'm sure the government will fix it up. Well, let me tell you, members, that nothing has been done by the government, neither state or federal, from that day to this. Chris Minns seems to me to be a very decent fellow and very rational and easy to talk to. I don't know whether he's heard about this issue or not, but it is real. It's going to happen one day. There will be a fire and there will be these issues. So that's an example of a no-brainer on which the approval should have been rejected, but it was approved. There was a steamrolling towards solar and they couldn't give a damn about the local community. Just a few other points. Moving on, rather than that, I'll give you a summary of my comments, but can I just move to nuclear? On the little I found out about nuclear, really, when a friend or an acquaintance of mine, James Gooden, who lives in Cootamundra, told me that he was opposing solar, and James McGurr, the local member, Joe McGurr, the local member, was in support of him. I went down there and told them about the insurance issue and various others, or a group of us went down. The end result is that James rang me a few weeks ago and he said, look, you've got down the planning authority rules and so on, and you've lost. That's bad luck to you, and I'm sorry, but I just thought I'd let you know that we didn't. We decided to go straight to Albo and Bowen. We met with them in private, all right? Their proposal was then shelved. And he said, we'll know, I think, on the 30th of June as to whether they're going to shelve it totally. And it was totally shelved. It's abundantly clear to me that pure politics runs this, nothing about merits. Such that I have conducted 2 of these. I've opposed 2 of these solar plants, but not a third. I've been asked to help with a third, and I believe I'm wasting my time dealing with merits. In relation to nuclear, I have extensively travelled throughout Europe, and these nuclear plants are clear and obvious to all, and I came to realise that they've been in action for 30 years or more. Throughout France, they're in the countryside, in the middle of paddocks or near residential places, and there appears to be no problem whatsoever. They're non-invasive. Residence and stock grazing is right up to the point, building itself, and then in any event, in relation to nuclear here, whatever you members or whatever is decided, it seems clear to me that there must be a decision in relation to base power before you worry about renewables. It seems clear that we need a base power, whether that be gas or solar or whatever. And it also seems clear that they need to run at a certain capacity to be economical. So you need to sort out how much the wires that you want, how much they can absorb, work out how much output 80% of capacity produces, and then decide on how much solar or wind you need to supplement it. So in my view, I suggest that the government so far is simply doing it the wrong way around. Mr Bowen would have solar everywhere, couldn't care less about the countryside at all. To put solar in the location it is at Glenrock is just an absolute disgrace and total disregard to the welfare of the land or the people surrounding or indeed anywhere else. So that's all. In the very short time we have, that's all I can say. I do have, in fact, a bit of a summary of what I've said, and could I hand a copy to each member?
That's no worries. You can table that to the Secretariat. Thank you, Mr Hennessy. I'd also like to welcome Mr Kidd today to give evidence. For the Hansard record, would you please state your name and capacity which you appear before the committee?
Reg Kidd, New South Wales Executive Council, and I chair the New South Wales Transition to Renewable Energy Task Force for New South Wales farmers.
Thank you.
I'm a farmer at Orange, and I have several science degrees.
Thank you very much. For this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false and misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Before we ask you to make a brief opening statement and we go to discussions, would you please state if you're a current or former member of a political party or a union or an investor in the renewables or nuclear industries?
I was a member of a union when I was at university, and post that the New South Wales Farmers Teachers Federation, and I was also the regional representative for that. Post that, I have not been a member of a political party.
Thank you. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement, Mr Kidd.
Look, how long do we have?
A few minutes, yeah.
A few minutes. I apologise for being late. I've just come back from South Australia and Victoria looking at renewables, actually, for the last week or so. Look, I think the most important thing with New South Wales farmers is that we're looking at the transfer into renewable energies, and we want to look at facts and not fiction on renewables, on what they can do, and protecting our very, very valuable agricultural and horticultural soils that are very, very minimal within Australia. And we see that food and fibre production is probably the ultimate thing for the success of any nation into the future, because people have got to be fed. And a concern that we have with the renewable haste that's occurring at the moment, that it is at the expense of a lot of our farming areas and our farming communities, and based on emotion and not on science. Most of it is politically driven, and most of it, unfortunately, in some forms of media, is pushed on misinformation that's given to people. Thus, we set up a committee. We have people from right across the state with various forms of skills to look at the transition into renewables, whether that be wind, whether that be solar, whether that be nuclear, or what we believe the future will see is a mix of various forms of energy production that will be needed to give the base load, as I heard someone mention this morning, going into the future. And we really have to look at the future, just not right now, or the political cycles, or the next 5 or 10 or 15 years. We really have to think about the future for our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, going forward to as a great nation that we actually are. I have solar. I've had it on my place for 22 years. I get 7 cents a kilowatt for it, and I have to buy my electricity back at a hell of a lot more than that. I know my solar panels are only about 30% efficient to what they were, and I do know right at this very moment who will recycle those panels when I have to remove them sometime next year when I can afford it. So there's a whole range of issues I think that need to be addressed. I've travelled to, in the last 2 years, I've been through Germany and France looking at renewables. And also earlier this year I was in Washington DC, New York and up into Canada, particularly looking at renewables, but in fact nuclear. And I'm quite convinced now that it's obvious that many of the limitations of relying solely on intermittent renewable sources would not fulfil our energy needs into the future. And whilst nuclear energy has been a contentious issue in Australia and elsewhere up to recently, we really do need a shift in focus in what we're actually doing, and it has to be evidence-based, not based on hearsay and scaremongering.
Thank you, Mr Kidd. Mr Payne, if we could just keep it to the 3 minutes, that'd be great, please.
I could go on for 300 minutes, but I will try and be brief.
That's all right. I'll pull you up when we get to the 3, all right?
Sure, I understand that. In fact, I would prefer to answer questions rather than put forward. I will say several things. Firstly, I am a professional engineer, have been all my life, over 5 decades. I'm now currently today a self-imposed impoverished postgraduate student studying nuclear science for a master's, which I hope to achieve by the end of 27 at the latest. I am a very strong proponent of renewable energies as the solution for today. I recognise what Peter's just said and the other gentleman at the end has just said about how it's being implemented. I do understand there are environmental issues, there are regulatory issues, there are all sorts of implementation issues, but we are living in a time of transition, like going from horses to motor vehicles, which only happened in 10 years, but was a massive change. And we are going through that now, and it's very uncomfortable for some people. I have a lot of sympathy with the people on the land who are dealing with these issues right now, but for their exponent, as they and the member opposite me, Mr O'Brien, have stated publicly as being in support of the nuclear industry as it is today, I strongly object to. There is so much misinformation being put out about what nuclear can do for us today, and I take exception to this, that we should not try and pivot to nuclear as it stands today. We're in a point of change, of inflection in the technology, and it would be a massive disservice to Australia to go down the path of boiling water reactors or pressurised water reactors, light reactors. They have inherent unsafeness about them. They are not inherently safe because of the physics and the chemistry. And the industry hides a lot of dirty little secrets, like where does the enriched uranium come from in order to provide the fuel? More than 50% of it in the West comes from Russia or China, and I will not give up my sovereignty for us seeing our free energy being given across as in money form to Russia, who I would suggest is not particularly stable today in the path in which it's going. That is a mistake that the Americans made a long time ago. They're working towards correcting it. All of the high enriched that's being used in the more modern so-called Gen 4, and there have been no Gen 4 reactors actually built. They're certainly in progress, but they're all struggling to actually get the requirements defined enough and get it actually into commercial service. So we're stuck with this current thing. And to implement it now, Ted, sorry, you are totally wrong, and I totally reject all of the public statements that you put out about nuclear energy. You're misinforming the community. It is therefore also a total mispurpose to ask politicians to decide on which form of technology. I agree you've got to take into account public opinion and the values, but the decisions have got to be values-driven and engineering rationality-driven and not driven by ideology. So that's the brief statement.
Thank you, Mr Payne. And we'll go to the Deputy Chair first, Mr O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for appearing today. I might start with Mr Hennessy and Mr Kidd. Both of you did make comments about the lack of community engagement and local community consideration with the rollout of industrial scale renewables across this region. Are you aware that the Australian Energy Infrastructure Commissioner had completed a review, is actually now the former Commissioner Andrew Dyer, which surveyed regional communities, identifying 92% being dissatisfied with community engagement. Since then, the Albanese government has not taken any action in this regard. Do you see any reason, have you seen any action to improve the treatment of regional communities?
Yes, well, if I may deal with that. I did. Towards the end of the process in relation to Glanmire, there was a publication to that effect, that in fact 92% took an adverse view of solar. I related it to solar at Glanmire, in fact. Look, you come to realise then after a while that merits go out the window and politics takes over. We have, Bathurst is a wonderful city. It's historically a railway town and it's very, very good. I love being there. On the other hand, we do have a left-wing council. There's been a real attempt to change that, all right, in recent council elections and so on. The point about that is that the council were told about this. The council were interviewed by the Commission, and if you read their responses, it was totally biased. They said we wanted it for employment. Then, in fairness to the Commission, the Commissioner asked, there's a transcript of all of this, well, you say you need it for employment, all right, well, is there a shortage of work here? No, the response was, in fact, we are 100% employed. So in fact, you'll have to bring people from out of town to deal with this. That was the sort of answer, a nonsensical answer, all right, to any council who was supporting solar. In relation to my insurance points, the town planner said to the Commission, I don't understand Mr Hennessy's point. Well, let me tell you, he is the only one since who doesn't understand. Our town planner still refuses to understand. My point is well made. It was not appreciated by many others. The Commission often approved solar on the basis, without any evidence, that, oh, well, look, there'll be indemnities. Indemnities don't work. A proponent is usually a $2 company that will sell on the proposal. So you have, and indemnities are personal agreements. So one has to police a personal agreement going from the proponent to a purchaser. And you then need to police it going through to an insurance company. An insurance company, the solar insurance company, agreeing not to sue a negligent neighbour. It's not going to happen. And in any event, who is going to police this? The state planning authority won't. Anyway, coming back to it, the council knew all of this. They knew about the 92%. And I spoke with the mayor, who was fortunate enough to resign a few weeks ago. Very sensible thing. I digress to say, he was the chap who, when nuclear was first mentioned, said it won't be coming through our town, the waste rate coming from our town. When the nuclear chaps came into town a few months ago to give a talk about nuclear, experts, as distinct from Peter who just rhetoricked on, these were experts who told us...
Can we please be respectful to witnesses?
Yes, thank you, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Hennessy.
Sorry, I withdraw that.
We're all here representing however, and it doesn't matter how people represent.
Yeah, I withdraw that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I claim to be an expert.
Yeah.
Mr Payne, please be respectful as well.
Yeah. The expert was asked about nuclear waste, and a questioner in the audience said our mayor told us we should be worried about waste coming through the city. And the expert said, well, look, you should tell your mayor that for the last 10 or 15 years, nuclear waste has been taken through your city on a weekly basis. and I imagine he didn't even know. So I suggest your Mayor do a bit of reading before he makes those comments. The point about that is that the great problem with these debates is that people take a political point of view. And in that sense, I agree with Peter. Politics should be out of it. Experts should be got together and sort these things out. So I do know about the 92%, and as far as I'm concerned, nothing has changed at all.
Mr. Kidd.
Yes, I've met Mr. Dye, I should say, and I've had a lot to do with that report and other reports that really do highlight the fact that the engagement with communities has been basically non-existent. You can quote 2 or 3 people they spoke to. I've been to so many meetings throughout New South Wales in particular, in various communities where people originally were spoken to. And if you asked a question, whether this be on solar, whether this be on wind, whether it be on anything, you were sort of seen as a heteric for asking a question about decommissioning, or if you spoke about waste, or if you spoke about how that would affect the infrastructure within a community. Finally, there was recognition that things were really slowed down because of lack of engagement, genuine consultation and engagement. Do I think it's improved? In some sectors. I will table this. I can't give you a copy. It's at the printers at the moment. You'll see it's got the New South Wales government signature on it, and that's a Labor government. We have Queensland FF, New South Wales and Energy Co. This has been put together based on fact, not fiction, on the things that have been mentioned here this morning. It's insurance, decommissioning. What happens if there's leakage out of solar panels or whatever and the land's decontaminated? Fire risk, insurance risks, recycling, the effect on communities, the effect of individuals. Now, as I said, I've been all over this state and I've seen it split families. Split families. Split communities. Communities guaranteed that, oh no, everything will be good for you and it will generate employment. Yeah, 5,000 people around Marywall for 10 months constructing something, then disappear and it's all run electronically. That doesn't generate employment in the area. How many of the farms don't longer exist? What happens to the roads around that area, just as an example? So I think this has been an attempt by New South Wales farmers to get genuine engagement. There will be an MOU with it, with the government department, on how we work in these regions on fact and on a contractual agreement on what they do and getting people proper information so they can make an informed decision, not based on emotion, not based on threat. I had a phone call this morning on one of the reasons I was late. I will tell you, a person in another area from this still has a belief that they can have their land resumed for renewables. Now they're mixing that up with transmission towers, they can, but it's a free choice if you want to put solar or wind or whatever, but it has another effect on the community. Seems simple, but I can tell you, I get around the state a hell of a lot, and I can guarantee you some very, very intelligent people are absolutely being hoodwinked about what can happen and what can't happen, that we need to put in front of them. So we're hoping, you know, we've got something that's not just for farmers, by the way. This is for people within communities, and I've spoken in a lot of communities about it. So in answer to your question, no, the genuine engagement and consultation with individuals and communities to date has been deplorable, to say the least.
So the Coalition's plan with respect to nuclear energy is to have a comprehensive community engagement process that would go up to 2.5 years, which would enable the community to identify any key issues it wants an independent report done on, not by politicians, but by experts. And concurrently for there to be a regional deal to be negotiated with the local community on prioritised transport, community, infrastructure, public services and so forth. So there are community benefits. While there's also then negotiations on the establishment of an integrated economic development zone for industry, all the while that the experts are doing feasibility work before a final ultimate decision is taken by the minister. That is clearly a different approach from the one that the current government is undertaking. Can I just get your feedback on how that sort of approach might be received locally?
Oh, look, can I just answer that? Oh, look, well, it'll be embraced. People are tired of, particularly in rural areas, and look, throughout Australia, I travel, have been told what's good for them, quite often not based on fact, based on someone else's theories or self-interest. People want to get and then make an informed decision. Look, I read a hell of a lot, and scientific journals, and now some of them haven't been peer reviewed, but I really do go into a lot of work on trying to get my science together because I have a science background. Now, some science is proven down the track to not be quite spot on, but it's best at the time. It's hypothetical, and science does change, and as things move along. So I think we really do have to do that. And the nuclear debate I find is interesting because I can say even in this room and having looked at some of the people who've got no idea, we had Lucas Ice since 1956, which is a nuclear reactor. But nuclear, okay, and radioisotopes are good for medicine. But we're talking about something different. I listened yesterday from reports coming out here about Chernobyl. Yeah, an absolute disaster. So were the first planes and so were the first trains. But they keep mentioning Japan. And I heard an interview this morning. I had a family, an elderly couple from that prefecture live with us for 4 months, and their daughter and their granddaughter during that period. They're back farming in that area and so forth. Most of the people that died there were drowned. But we don't talk about that. No, we talk about it was this big disaster and there was radiation leaks and so forth. That's false. Don't scaremonger people. Life's pretty tough at the moment, so let's engage with the people and go through a proper process and then let them make a choice. And I think with renewables, I think nuclear, solar, wind, and a range of other things, perhaps not all the same, will be the mix that we need to have a stable form of energy going forward.
Mr Deputy Chair, can I just say, yes, any chance at consultation is fantastic, and that's what has to happen. Can I just very briefly indicate, in the relation to the two proposals out at Glanmire and Brewongle, which are the two proposed sites were about 1 kilometre apart. The first one was in 2017, and I'd read the State Planning Authority rules, but I decided that they were deficient in that they proposed one-on-one meetings with the community. Now that went out when the police force were required to tape records of interviews. One-on-one interviews are dangerous. One or other will lie. So I proposed a public meeting, and the public meeting was held. The proponent came along, and the proponent clearly never returned. Why? Because they were lying, and if I may say so, we were able to demonstrate they were lying. They came and told the community that they were a public company, a big company registered in Warsaw, and we could buy shares. But on my questioning, of course, the big public company was indeed in Warsaw. There was a $2 company over here. If someone wanted to have redress, they had no access to the company in Warsaw. Not only that, this company, Photon, lied about that. They didn't, nor did they refer to the fact that they had been sued in, I think it was Dallas in the United States. And the first defence they raised was that the company in Warsaw was sued. We were not resident there, we can't be sued. They failed in that defence, and then they sort of lies being told. They were clean bowled the first time. This is the huge benefit of a public discussion, but you need experts. What we all think here is interesting, and mainly or charged by I'm told and he's told. You need experts really before you. And not only that, if I may say so, you need an expert. You need, and I'm not obsessed by the judicial process, I understand its shortcomings, but we wouldn't need 2.5 years, Mr Deputy Chair, to get to the truth of what's required. A judge would need a few weeks and decent witnesses on both sides, and rightly or wrongly, we do seem to have the capacity to adjudicate. All right.
Thank you, Mr Hennessy.
Okay. Thank you. No.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Dr Ryan.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Appreciate it. We've heard a lot from the witnesses about their concerns around community consultation, and also the need for accurate information and expert input, I guess, into the energy transition. I'm just wondering, just because we're hearing a lot from the political parties about their lack of faith in the information, particularly the coalition, about their lack of faith in the information presented to them by scientific organisations, whether the witnesses can tell us what sort of information they think would be acceptable and credible to their communities.
Well, I might start by saying I found just recently, and I can say I admire him as being a very, very good journalist. Chris Ullman's program that's just on recently on energy, I found that quite enlightening. You know, he went through and sort of a whole range of issues that people should think. I also have seen a thing in the States called Nuclear Now, which was quite good. It was talking about pros and cons, risks, future of it. Another thing I've read is Apocalypse Never, and it does say to me one thing, that, you know, I'm no expert on it. I'm learning all the time, but certainly I even believe now I've got a better handle on it than some of the stuff that I actually do have pushed at me or thrown at me on behalf of our members, you know, and that's quite important. I represent people from all sides of politics and right across the state and all sorts of processes, and I think it's quite important for them that, you know, it's got to be a level playing field. And as I said, that will be, and
Could you table that to the Secretariat, either email copy or something like that?
Yeah, look, I'll have to spare the printers to make, because that's got draft on it. It was based on what was done in Queensland, and I can tell you that the Minister, that is the State Minister, is very, very keen to see this get out and in the hand, to get it handed to people, because we're still waiting on some questions like on insurance, which we can't, recycling and decommissioning. So it'll be a working document and upgraded. So I think, in question to Dr Ryan, as I said, it depends on people's expertise, but, you know, and the sort of information that's given to people. And I think the world is full of misinformation now, not information.
The issue of insurance has gone on for so long. I think if I may say so, was the first one to raise it in a real way. But it's gone on. Our local member at the time was Paul Toole, who was then Deputy Premier. I raised it with Paul. He was excellent. He was all in favour of us. But what he did when he was in politics, I do not know. It wasn't heard of again. Our friend Sam Farraway has been excellent, but he's not in power. He tells me he's raised it with the relevant minister, but nothing has happened. Now, the answer is easy. If someone was to ask me, as best I can, the answer is easy at the moment. And I don't want to take up too much time, but if I can illustrate by way of insurance, if your vehicle and mine collide, two different insurance companies, they don't sue one another. They've got a knock-for-knock agreement. If a semi-trailer collides with my car, the knock-for-knock agreement probably doesn't occur, so one company sue the other. So there is the knock-for-knock agreement. If all of these solars were put together, for example, in the renewable energy zones, I have no doubt that, like insurance companies, would sort it out. But if you try to mix not only a renewable, but a commercial insurance company With a rural setup, it doesn't work. So the immediate answer is obvious. Stop these outside the zones, put them in the zones, and the installers will work out between themselves insurance. But no, I don't know whether the politicians must think it's not going to happen. They must think there's not going to be a Lismore, there's not going to be a Pink Bats, and there is not going to be a case like mine. I did several fires worth millions of dollars for farmers when I was at the bar. These issues are real and they will occur. So that's that. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. We'll just go to Mr. Burnell for a quick question before we finish up.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a lot of talk about facts and fiction this morning, and this is a yes or no answer response, please.
It could be, please be yes or no, because we are at it.
Yeah. Do you regard the CSIRO to be a facts-based organisation? Yes or no?
I know it's not.
Okay.
Sometimes.
And yourself, Mr. Payne?
I have a lot of faith in the CSIRO. Sometimes they are guided by forces where
Yes or no?
results
So
will
they're
be
either a
shaped.
facts-based organisation or they're not?
Yes, they are a facts-based organisation.
Yes?
Who
Okay.
plays the pipe chooses the tune.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnell. Thank you for your time today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, including questions on notice, please forward it to the Secretariat by Friday the 10th of January 2025. Please note that responses to these questions will be taken on notice and will be published, will be taken on notice, will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You will be sent a copy of those transcript of the evidence. To assist you with answering questions taken on notice today, you'll have an opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry we only had limited time, but this is all we've got in these hearings, and we do only have limited time. So thank you very much.
Can I add these to the papers?
You could that's in there already, tabled already.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, thank you. And if you could table that once you get,
That's the draft.
yep, once it's, can you let the Secretariat know, please, once it's ready? Yeah.
She can have that one.
If you could email a copy.
Yeah, I can get that.
Yep,
email to you.
thank you. And when it's ready to be put out publicly so that we can see it.
Friday.
Yep, excellent. Thank you.